morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Convener, we have apologies from Councillor Spears.
Okay, thank you for that. Any declarations of interest? No, none indicated at this time. Okay, we go to item 3, which is the minute of the executive held on the 21st of August. Are we happy to agree that as a true record? Reid, is there any questions in relation to the minute? No. Okay, item 4 is the rolling action log, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log records those decisions of the executive which call for a follow-up report. There is an expected reporting date and information provided where the report isn't expected by its anticipated reporting date. And the rolling action log appears up to date, but it's available for members' questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moody. Is there any questions in relation to the rolling action log? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on into our substantive agenda, item 5 is the end of schools PPP contract update, and I will now open it up for members' questions to officers. Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Convener. Just the one question. How do officers propose to keep the schools in a satisfactory condition?
Convener, as we've highlighted in the report, the Council's entered into a facilities management contract through the Crown Commercial Services, which provides us with both reactive and planned maintenance together with our statutory compliance works across the estate. And this is very similar to the level of service that we obtained under the PPP contract. We'll also have the ability to secure capital investment in the normal way as we do for our wider learning estate as we go forward where it's required.
Okay, thank you. Any further? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Just like to check, before the Council took control back of these schools, are officers satisfied that everything that should have been done by the contractors was done? And can you give us a bit of detail on that?
Convener, yes, over the past 2 years, colleagues have been liaising with both Class 98 external lawyers and specialists in terms of property construction and maintenance, and we've ensured that the terms of the Class 98 concession were fully implemented, including the handback provisions, which is the most important one as you get to the expiry of the contract. Works that have been undertaken over the past couple of years have totaled over £4.5 million and have included replacement of all boilers, significant works to roofs and other improvements across the learning estate to ensure that they come back in the condition that they're contractually obliged to have come back in. Though we do have to recognise they are 25-year-old schools and fair wear and tear is allowed within the contract, but we're satisfied that the condition have come back in. A few minor issues, but we are resolving those. Class 98 are still contractually obliged to undertake those, as is Chartwells, who run the catering concession. So there's some minor items in those to be dealt with, but nothing of any significance.
Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Nimmo.
Just a quick question, Convener. Paul, do we actually own the land that these schools are built on?
We did originally own the schools in 4 of them, but the Braes, the land had to be acquired and was held by Class 98 until the end of the concession. We paid £5 million across all of the schools, which was it's known as a bullet payment at the end of the PPP contracts, which isn't unusual. We now have ownership of all the sites, all the schools.
Okay, thank you. There are no further questions. I'll go to Councillor Sinclair to move the report.
Thank you, Convener. This is a report that's 25 years in the making. So I'll, whilst the contract has been lengthy and a lot has been said about it over the years, I think I'll try and keep my comments as brief as possible. Obviously, this is the follow-up report as a result of the Education, Children and Young People's Executive taking the decision back in 2022 not to extend the PPP contract, which expired in August, obviously, and we've taken back the possession of Bowness Academy, Braes High School, Graham High School, Larbert High School, and that includes the Thistlewing Annex. There are some positives to come out of the report. Obviously, there will be benefits to the council going forward, including cost reduction. And that means there's no management fee or margin paid to a managing agent, Class 98 Limited in this situation. And obviously, we're not paying for the borrowing for the original capital. We're achieving a consistency of service provision across the entire school estate. We're ensuring best value, and that's demonstrated by the combination of in-house and tendered FM services. We have the opportunity for income generation, a wider income generation model for all of the school estate now, where that's concerned, where all the lets and utilisation of the schools are aligned via the council. And decision making, there's not a requirement to seek approval or engage with third parties on maintenance or improvement works, so that's going to make a whole host of streamlined decisions easier to come by. And obviously we had to, for the privilege of this, we've had to pay 5 million on top of everything we've paid to buy them back. Another real positive, we've got 78 staff transferred to council management, with 3 retaining their mighty terms and conditions with the facilities manager that we've engaged with through Crown Services. And that's those who have transferred into the council will benefit from those terms and conditions. There are some savings to come from this, clearly, over the next couple of years. Approximately 2 million 25-26 and a further million from 26-27. And that's to be commended. I think what I want to say before I go into my final part of my remarks is a huge thank you to Paul and his team. And everybody that's been involved in this. This has not been an easy process to get through, but we have got through it, and it's thanks to the professionalism and dedication of our council officers, which is absolutely to be commended. Let me qualify the points that I'm about to make, though. There's nobody in this room responsible for PFI. Those of us here today, though, are having to deal with what I would consider short-sighted, politically driven decisions through the toxic legacy of profiteering from public contracts, which in turn impacts on the decisions we have had to consider through this term so far, and will have to consider for the foreseeable future. Falkirk Council taxpayers have paid £318 million over the 25-year period for these schools, despite an initial cost of £65 million. While it might not be entirely fair to make comparisons given the complexity of the contracts and the services provided, the fact remains that there are those who have made significant sums of money from PFI contracts over a number of years, placing huge burdens on the taxpayer. I find that prospect shameful, which is why it surprises me that the current UK Secretary of State for Health is considering allowing private companies access to NHS contracts, effectively opening the door to PFI 2.0. Any facilities being built will be privately owned, with private healthcare shareholders standing to make billions in profits. If Falkirk's PFI deal was considered to be the first and worst by former Labour leader Wendy Alexander, then it's clear that this UK government is doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. I think we are in a very challenging time of financial constraint right across the public sector, and anything that we can do to help alleviate that situation, we can do. Now, I'm pleased that we've got these back under Falkirk Council control, and the benefits and the opportunities that will open up going forward. However, we cannot hide away from the legacy that we have been left to pick up the pieces from. So with that, Convener, I will move the report and thank everybody for their time.
Thank you, Councillor Garner.
Happy to say.
Thank you. I'll now, as there's no amendment, there's no debate, but I'll just go to group leaders for any comment.
We have no amendment. Likewise, pleased to have these schools back under council control. Pleased that it's going to result in a number of savings over time. I think we have to remember that we would not have these schools if it hadn't been for the PFI contracts that were taken out in the first place. It may have cost a great deal of money, but it has also benefited our pupils.
Thank you. Billy Kerr?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murphy? Okay, Councillor Nutter?
Yeah, I would agree with the majority of remarks that have been made in terms of the ending of PFI, and that, you know, it is a legacy that we've all had to deal with, and that it was, I think, proved to be a disastrous policy that's cost our taxpayers. However, I think we focus on the job that we've got to do. I don't have an amendment because it's positive to see, but I do look forward to the service that our staff will provide within these facilities, and never again seeing the infamous Larbert High bucket story play out 15 different times in a session. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. In which case, I'll be happy to agree the report. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is participation in Scotland Excel Flexible Framework Agreement for the provision of care home for adults. I will open it up for questions, but I'm going to ask, first of all, probably Mr. Moody to explain why is this before us when the provision of the care home service is managed through the IJB.
Thank you, Convener. It's primarily because the IGB itself has no contractual capacity. The contracting authority is the council for these purposes, and that reflects more broadly that the IGB directs how the service is provided, but the service is provided by the council as part of the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll therefore ask if there's any further questions MD would like to ask. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I wonder if officers could just explain a little more about the Falkirk framework and Scotland Excel Flexible Framework.
Okay, I'll go to Mr. Tom Martin.
Thank you, Convener. Members may recall that I brought a paper to this committee probably about 2 years ago setting out that we were moving towards a Falkirk specific framework. Now at that time the Scotland Excel framework was very broad, not only covered younger adults, it wasn't very specific around the service requirement in relation to things like substance use, mental ill health, sensory or physical impairment. So at that point, we developed our own framework and focused primarily on those client groups so that we could ensure we got specific services for those clients groups, and we could be really clear with providers around the expectations of that provision, rather than that global kind of catch-all framework that was there previously. The Falkirk framework was actually really successful in terms of getting buy-in from local providers, and we were able to contract with the vast majority of local providers in relation to that new framework. And because it focused on specific groups, we were able to really set out what the expectations were in terms of service delivery. Our hope really was that all providers, not just those within Falkirk, would sign up to the Falkirk framework. However, we found that wasn't the case, and we still require to use alternative means to contract with providers outside the Falkirk area. Thankfully, Scotland Excel have revised their contract, and this is a new framework that Scotland Excel have taken forward, and they have looked at the success of the Falkirk framework, which is why the new framework through Scotland Excel actually really focuses in on specific client groups as well, so that we can be really clear around the expectations of providers in terms of the ongoing support to people within those resources. It's no longer that global catch-all contract that was there before. We can specify that people who require substance use services actually get those specific services whilst they're in these resources. So for me, actually, the new framework actually meets some of the requirements that we hope to get through this Falkirk specific framework, but will ensure that we can do that with a much wider group of providers, both outside the area and actually any new providers coming into Falkirk that haven't signed up to the Falkirk framework. Ultimately, we would hope that all providers sign up to the Falkirk framework, because that framework really set out that we are keen to work in partnership with providers to help them develop training programmes and actually look to develop a model excellence for all our service users. The ambition is still there within the Scotland Excel framework. However, that direct link with us is probably going to be more tenuous given it's a national contract. Hopefully that gives a bit of context and some reassurance that actually we believe this is absolutely the right thing to do. The difficulty, I guess, that we do have where we don't use the Scotland Excel framework for those providers is it makes the contracting arrangements a bit more difficult to monitor. It makes the expectations a bit more difficult to review, and it actually means that we have to contract on an individual basis for each service user, which in itself can create some challenges. So one of the benefits of using this framework in addition to the Falkirk specific framework will mean we can ensure consistency across all our contracted services. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Hannah.
Hi, thank you. Yes, that does answer the question. I have just one further question. Could officers just confirm, please, that this is not involving any additional costs to the council? This is already monies that have been previously committed.
Yes, I can absolutely confirm that. It's to use the spend that was previously allocated to care home provision for younger adults that the IGIB agreed back in 2023. It's that element that we're not commissioning through the Falkirk specific framework and the need to commission that through the Scotland Excel framework. So it's absolutely not any additional spend. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. There are no further questions. I think Martin has given a very good explanation of why the flexible framework through Scotland Excel has been brought forward. I think it's good that we've been able to show our expertise, and particularly around making sure that local providers are able to get part of that Excel framework, and hopefully that will give us a broader depth of choice, as well as the diversity that is required within the actual care homes for adults. I am therefore happy to move the report. Councillor Bowes?
Very quietly second you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just go to group leaders. Councillor Hannah?
No further comment.
Bailey Kerr?
No comment.
Councillor Murtagh? Happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, next item is assets surplus to operational requirements being the forum. And I will open it up for questions. I will begin with a question that is probably on most people's mind. What would be the potential uses of the property, and would there be any ability to put conditions at some point in relation to the use of the property going forward?
Convener, the process is the paper in front of us is to declare the property surplus to operational requirements. It is no longer required. The next stage in the process is that it would be marketed for sale, is the recommendation, because there is very limited use for large-scale offices in the post-COVID world, particularly in regional locations such as Falkirk. Given there is little prospect of that, we suspect that uses that may come forward, maybe subdivide it into smaller units. There is still a market for that in business centres. There's also the prospect for potential leisure uses or other uses, particularly bespoke fitness facilities. We know have went into a number of offices and indeed shops across the area. Any decision on the disposal, subject to the level that it's at, would come before elected members for decision together with those conditions, or would be undertaken as part of delegated authority if it was a lower value. In terms of the conditions that we would be expected to be applied, would be subject to planning, and the conditions of sale would reflect that. Most likely, any offer that came in would be subject to the planning process.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any other questions anybody would have in relation to this? No. Councillor Redmond.
Just could you clarify where all the services that were located in this building have they been relocated, and where have they been sent to?
Convener, so the primary service that was based in the building was housing, and they've been based in two main locations, which is the Foundry and the Falkirk Stadium.
Thanks. And then the last question was, you'd mentioned that you would expect it to come back to committee, but there's a threshold where it can be decided by under delegated powers. Could you just remind us what the threshold for price level is for that?
I'd need to check just for clarity, but I think it's £250,000. Maybe Colin Moody could help us.
Yes, the matter is covered in the standing orders, paragraph 60.22, if anyone wants to read it for themselves. The figure is 250,000, which is the level at which you're required to come to the executive to declare it surplus to requirements. Once the matter is declared, once the property is declared surplus to requirements, though, there's then delegated authority to proceed to sell the property. The outcome of the sale is reported back on the information bulletin. That's the current provision within the standing orders.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions. As has been said, the Forum building at Calendar Park Business Park was following the review of the office accommodation utilisation identified as being able to be vacated, with the staff being relocated, as we've heard, to the Foundry and Stadium. The moves occurred in March and April this year. The building was fully cleared earlier in the month and will now be mothballed. Part of the recent move towards a corporate landlord approach to the management of our operational property assets, it's no longer required for the operational use and therefore recommended to be declared surplus. From the market reviews, there's been a significant reduction in the demand for office space post-COVID, and it's unlikely that remarket it as a large office accommodation would be very limited, and demands for this type of property in the current climate. The building is dated and requires significant investment to meet modern standards. As there's little prospect of the property being let due to the lack of market interest locally and larger offices, the condition of the building, the property is recommended to be sold as soon as possible. If it's approved today to declare surplus, the property will be subject to surplus property procedures, which we've just heard, and exposed to the market for sale, failing which it will be demolished with the site being sold. The holding costs of the property are £231,000 per year, and that would be the saving accrued. If sold, the property or site will generate a capital receipt, and any disposal will be reported to council or approved under delegated authority, as has just been said. So I'm happy to move the report.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Go to Councillor Hannah.
We have no amendment. I think we can trust our officers to take this forward to maximise best value for the council.
Thank you. Bailey Kerr.
No comment.
Okay. Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, the report is welcome, but I also have no further comment. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Moving into the resources and finance section. Sorry, we're already in the resources and finance section. Item 8, just to highlight that there's been an addendum or an alteration to the recommendations. Fortunately, one of the recommendations for item 8 was missed off the agenda. I think that was circulated to everyone in due course, and it was in relation to the enablement fund. Can I ask everybody's agreement they're content with that being amended?
Content.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, I will now go to Charlotte, who will give us the overview of the report.
Thank you, Convener. As members will be aware, asset transfer application reports are quasi-judicial and their processing and determination is governed by statutory requirements, therefore should be considered on their merits. The purpose of this report set out today is to consider the community asset transfer for Geardock Park Pavilion to Geardock United Football Club, who are a registered scale and therefore suitably constituted to make the CAT transfer request. The report is seeking agreement to transfer by way of a 20-year full repair and insurance licence at a rental of £1 per year to the group, which reflects the benefits that will derive from the project as outlined in the report. The pavilion is already currently under a licence to the club. The application and business case has been reviewed by officers and were considered appropriate and compliant in terms of the Council's statutory obligations in terms of both the Community Empowerment Scotland Act 2015 and the Disposal of Land Regulations 2010. The application was validated and progressed through the appropriate statutory evaluation and notification process. The outcomes for all non-financial elements were considered positive in terms of supporting positive outcomes aligned to the Council's objectives for health and wellbeing and in empowering communities. As outlined in the report, if agreed by Executive, a decision notice will be issued incorporating the provision to bring the lease to an end if the lease subjects are not used for the permitted use for a period of 1 year or more as outlined in the report. Members will note the addendum recommendation in relating to the enablement fund request that was unfortunately omitted from the report issued for Executive. The fund request is, however, noted within the report, and the recommendation is to provide an enabling fund award of up to £22,680, which will support the viability of the project by enabling capital improvements and, in particular, the roof of the pavilion. If agreed, this will be offered to the group subject to assessment and conditions as outlined in the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Charlotte. Is there any questions in relation to this item? No. Okay, I'm content to move the report.
A second.
Okay. Everybody content?
Very pleased that this pavilion is going to be put to good use. And thank you to officers for all their hard work.
Thank you. Moving on to the next one, which is the asset transfer of a lease for the Letham Pavilion.
Thank you, Convener. As previously outlined, members will be aware that asset transfer application reports are quasi-judicial and their processing and determination is governed by statutory requirements, therefore should be considered on their own merits. The purpose of this report is to consider the community asset transfer for Letham Pavilion to Geardock United Football Club, who are a registered scale and therefore suitably constituted to make the CAT transfer request. The report is seeking agreement to transfer by way of a 20-year full repair and insurance tenant lease at a rental of £1 per year to the group. This reflects the benefits that will derive from the project that has been outlined in the report. The pavilion is already currently let under a licence to the club. The application and business plan have been reviewed by officers and were considered appropriate and compliant in terms of the Council's statutory obligations and in terms of both the Community Empowerment Act Scotland and the Disposal of Land Regulations. The application was validated and progressed through the appropriate statutory evaluation and notification process. The outcomes outlined in the business plan produced by the club in terms of their non-financial elements were considered as positive in terms of supporting positive outcomes aligned to the Council's objectives for health and wellbeing and for empowering communities. As outlined in the report, if agreed by Executive, a decision notice will be issued incorporating the provision to bring the lease to an end if the lease subjects are not used for the permitted use for a period of 1 year or more, and this has been outlined in the report. No enablement fund request has been made in respect to this property. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Any questions in relation to this item? No. I'm content to move the report. Right, thank you. Anyone else wish to comment?
Agreed.
Okay, I've got Councillor Murtagh, then Councillor Hannah.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I would have been happy to second.
We were
this.
ready for agreeing it.
Well, we have agreed it. It's been moved and seconded.
No, that's
So
fine.
it's just
Well, I'm happy to say why I don't have an amendment as per standing orders, if that's all right. I think that I didn't make a declaration as just a transparency statement, despite having awareness of these groups and with their intentions. I just want to say that the Lethen Pavilion is a particularly good example of where something might have seemed insurmountable to local groups and been really difficult, and the work of our officers to help groups to get through that process is really appreciated. And I think it's been mirrored with others, but I think particularly when you've got these sorts of examples, it deserves particular praise, and I'm really pleased to see this go forward. But I just want to put on record that how well in general that represents how the SPR process has gone, and encourage others who might have been still feeling that was insurmountable to take forward that example. Thank you, Convener.
okay, thank you, Councillor Hannah.
I didn't have any questions or comment.
Bailey Kerr, no comment. Okay, our final item is the community benefit lease of Glensborough Pavilion, and over to Charlotte.
Thank you, Convener. Similarly to the other CAT reports just being considered, members will be aware that asset transfer applications are quasi-judicial and their processing and determination is governed by statutory requirements, therefore should be considered on their own merits. The purpose of this report is to consider the community asset transfer for Glensborough Pavilion within Grangemouth to ES Galaxy Football Club, who are a registered scale and therefore suitably constituted to make the CAT transfer request. The report seeks agreement to transfer by way of a 20-year full repair and insurance lease at a rental of £1 per year to the group, which reflects the benefits that will derive from the project as outlined in the report. The pavilion is already currently under license to the club. The application and the business case have been reviewed by officers and were considered both appropriate and compliant in terms of the Council's statutory obligations in terms of both the Community Empowerment Act and the disposal of land regulations. The application was validated and progressed through the appropriate statutory evaluation and notification process. The outcomes for all non-financial elements were considered as positive in terms of supporting the positive outcomes aligned to the Council's objectives for health and wellbeing and empowering communities. As outlined in the report, if agreed by Executive, a decision notice will be issued incorporating the provision to bring the lease to an end if the lease subjects are not used for the permitted use for a period of 1 year or more, and this has been outlined in the report. In addition, to support the viability of the community asset transfer, an enablement fund grant request of up to £21,985 is requested that will support capital improvements and in particular works to the roof, the electrics and plumbing of the pavilion. If agreed, this will be offered to the group subject to assessment and conditions outlined in the report, and happy to take any questions on this.
Okay, thank you again, Charlotte. Any questions in relation to this? No. I'm happy to move the report.
Happy to second.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of this morning's executive. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we've done that in pretty much record time. The team did give me a general target to see where we could get to. We've managed to exceed that. So thanks everybody for their cooperation and their contributions this morning.